An American documentary, Letters Home, a World War II scrapbook, March 27th, 2021. This is the story of a young girl during the war and her patriotic letter writing campaign to bolster the morale of the friends and residents of her town, Crete, Illinois, who had been swept into the service of our country in those most trying times. This is hosted by the Crete Area Historical Society, the Crete Public Library, and with our distinguished guest, Marilyn Kelling-Brower. Give us a salute there, Marilyn, so everybody knows who is who here.
Hi there.
We're so glad that you're here today. This program is being produced from two locations, Crete, Illinois, just south of Chicago, and from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Assisting with this project are Sarah Wegley of the Crete Public Library, Bruce and Beth Begitschke, who are Marilyn's daughter and son-in-law, Phyllis Monks, president of the Crete Area Historical Society, Tim Piepenbrink of the Crete Area Historical Society, and of course, Marilyn Kelling-Brower. So we'll kind of get the ball rolling here. Marilyn, if you wouldn't mind, would you tell us a little bit about your history growing up in Crete, your family, neighborhood, church and school, experiences, getting married, raising your own family, and about your patriotism, especially during the war. Tell us a little bit about yourself. We're going to get to know you pretty well here, but we might as well start off knowing you better.
Very good. Very good. Yes. Yes, I grew up in Crete on 1265 Wood Street, and it's right near Milburn Avenue and Dr. Miller's home. So I was contacting him all the time too, you know, because he was my neighbor and took care of me in high school, and then he took care of me when I had my first child even. So, and then he was in the service. Yeah. Anyway, it was just my mom and dad, August Kelling and Myrtle Kelling. And then we also had my grandmother live with us. So my dad, we only had a 2-bedroom house. So I pretty well slept in the dining room, and my brother had the other bedroom. Then when grandma fell and couldn't walk anymore, we took her in. And then before that, my dad finished the attic upstairs so that my brother and I had a bedroom upstairs there. We had plenty of room for grandma. So yeah, we knew all of our neighbors. They were really wonderful. So many of them belonged to the same church, of course. And then we did belong to the Trinity Lutheran Church there in Crete. And I was a Sunday school teacher through high school, and also sang in the church choir. So I was busy on Sundays as well as other days of the week. Yeah. And then my brother and I both graduated from the Lutheran school, the 8 grades there. And then we only had 2 years of high school. So they added on to that while I was growing up. And I lived just down the alley from the school, so I could see them building it. And I would, when our parents found out, we were climbing all over that new building that was being built. So, but my brother had to go to school in Bloom in Chicago Heights. He was there because we only had 2 years of high school. So then by the time I got to high school age, well, we had the 4 years. So I guess you could see then, then my family. Then I did go to Valparaiso University one year studying to be a deaconess. I kind of wanted to probably marry a pastor, and I did the next best thing. I married a pastor's son. So anyway, we had the 4 children, 9 grandchildren, and now we're up to 15 great grandchildren, and we were married 69 years. So let's see, and I was a member of the Legion, American Legion in Stager. We didn't have a American Legion in Crete at the time, so my dad and I were members there. And then, of course, that's pretty well, I guess, what you want to know about me growing up. So I've got lots of other things to talk about later when you ask.
Okay. Was your dad in the military during World War I, maybe?
Yes, that's why he was in American Legion, yes.
Okay, I kind
Yeah.
of figured that. Yeah. Okay. So you went to the Crete High School, which was just around the corner from your house. That's still standing today. And you got married after the war. I believe.
Right.
Had you known Ralph during the war at all? How did you guys meet?
Well, actually, our Walther League had a doings in Kankakee, Illinois, and that's when he first noticed me. My dad had taken all of us, my girlfriends, all to this meeting, and then one of his friends decided, oh, let's have a birthday party for his friend who was going to be 16, and he said, let's get girls to come. I was the girl, so that's all we knew really in high school. I was sophomore year in high school when that happened, and then I didn't keep contact with him during the war. Well, and then of course when I got through with that first year of college, and then he was discharged. Then of course all the different things. I think then in Beecher they always had something, and everybody went there to Beecher, and that's where we met again. And then he started calling me up again. So
it was quite a while after the war when you met up with Ralph again there. Okay. Well, the whole point of our documentary that we're doing here right now is because you had started writing letters to the guys from Crete that were in the service.
Right.
During World War II. You were 16 years old. What was that, about 1943 or 44?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you started writing letters to all these guys from Crete. So our topic today is these letters that you got back from them after you had sent letters to them wherever they were stationed. They were all over the world. And so you've kept all those letters in some albums that you have, or scrapbooks, however you want to call it. And so we're here to talk about the letter campaign that you had for writing and receiving these letters from these service people. I know Phyllis is going to maybe ask, was there any women involved that you were writing to? Any women from Crete that were in the service?
No, I didn't have anybody. I did have my Latin teacher. She went into the service.
Okay.
And there was one other one that I can remember, Rodenberg, but not anybody that I would have known or my brother would have known. So I didn't.
Okay. Well, I didn't know, how many women were in there, but at the end of our program, we're going to have some reference material for people to go to some other sites if they want to investigate some of the service people from Crete during World War II, because there was a movie taken, a color movie camera somebody in town had, and they took some movies of Crete servicemen while they were home on leave. And the reason I asked you about if there's any women in your card writing campaign was there was one gal, looked like she was in the Navy or Waves, if it would be the right branch for what she was in. and she was in that video. I mean, it was all guys except for this one gal. She was in there a couple times. So when you get this information and you look at it, you might enjoy watching this video, because they showed that it's not a really a, yeah, it's a film. They showed that film at the Ambet building one night, probably in the early 80s, and they showed the video. There was no sound with it, color pictures. And when they played that video at the Ambet building, my dad was in there kind of telling about some of the different people as they came up on pictures, and he spoke into a recorder. So after another 35 years or so after that, we got the video or the film, and we had the audio recording. And so Ryan Martin put the two together. They're not quite 100% matched up, but so as my dad's saying who the different people were, you know, they're coming across the screen. People could find out the names of these folks. That's quite interesting. So that's available for you to watch sometime if you'd like. That you find that pretty interesting. I don't know offhand how many people were in there, but it's almost a 25-minute video. So you can take a look at that. So that's where the women question came up, because that one gal was on there. So so you got married to Ralph after the war. These letters that you wrote to these guys. Now, just to give everybody a perspective, I took the liberty of looking up your high school yearbook, and it looks like there was about 33 students in your high school graduating class.
Right.
That sound about right?
Right.
Okay. So these letters that you had received back from these guys and wrote to these guys, 30 kids in your high school class, you wrote to how many different people? Do you know offhand?
No, I couldn't count them. Yeah, I wrote to one of the upperclassmen who had graduated, you know, before me a couple of years, and of course, you know, when you write to these men, it takes them 2 months maybe for them to get the letter, and
Right.
then takes maybe them another 2 months before they can manage time to write back to you again. And
Yeah.
but this young man, he was wounded several times. Bob Ron was his name, and then he finally was killed in Germany. So
his picture is on that film clip. He's about the second to last one on there.
Right.
So yeah, my dad said he was wounded twice, and finally he did get killed over in Germany.
Right. That's right.
Well, my question was, how many men did you write to? I think at one time you told me there was 260 guys that you wrote to.
Oh no, I didn't write to that many.
You got quite a few letters. Oh, we can investigate that a little bit. But your high school class had 33. So picture anybody that wants to write letters can send these letters out to all these different people, 200 and some people. Imagine that writing to your whole high school worth of kids twice. That's an enormous task to write so many letters and cards out for these guys. So, Phyllis, you have any questions for Marilyn? We could talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, Marilyn, how old were you when you first started writing these letters?
How old was I?
Yes, were you still in high school?
Oh yes.
Yeah, so were you about 16 or?
Yeah.
And why
when you first started writing letters?
Why did you start this? What initiated in your mind to do this, this writing thing?
Well, really, you know, after Tim's dad and my brother had that issue in the Crete record of all the servicemen, why then after that, my brother and my dad decided, let's remember all these people by starting something to recognize them. And so we asked Ed Kelling at the bowling alley if we could have one of the walls there. And then we put a big map up there of the world. And then we had the names of all the men, and we had also all of their addresses there. And that got to be kind of a chore to keep up with all of those addresses, because we wanted people to, write them too, not only me, but that other people would write these people. So then we changed and we went to the scrapbook. So then my dad found a book. And of course, he put a map of the flag of our country. And then he wrote name. He had a really good handwriting. So he wrote all the names on each sheet of paper. And from then on, I kept all of those addresses in that book. And we just put the names of the soldiers on the thing in the bowling alley. So that was my job, to always keep track of that and add the name. So that was a big job, to go to the bowling alley all the time and do that work. So anyway, then of course we got the Crete record. We got the paper from Chicago Heights, Star, and we go through those, and different families would send in articles about their servicemen. And so I would cut out all those and save those on every page. So it was really, really exciting.
And if you can sort of see in her scrapbook here, there's pictures and articles, and then they kept track of every place that he was or any information that they had. I don't know if you can read that. It looks blurry in mine.
We'll have to get a copy of that, and we'll probably put that as an image on this documentary so people can look at it. You had mentioned the Crete record issue.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Yep. I'll just briefly read it here. This issue is a special tribute given to Crete's fighting men, published on Thursday, August 20th, 1942. This has a picture of a couple of guys, Robert Weeks and Terry Rodenberg, on the front because they were both missing in action at the time. And on the back of the whole newspaper are pictures and mailing addresses of quite a few guys. I'm sorry I can't hold this up, but the library is going to scan this in also so people can look at it. And the center section of the paper has more pictures and addresses. I mean, it's quite a large undertaking there. And in this particular issue in 1942, it says here there are 82 people from Crete serving in the military at that time, 1942. I'm not sure how many total that Crete had in the service overall, but it also says in this newspaper article that Crete ranked third in the state of Illinois with the percentage of participants in the service of eligible citizens. So Crete was a very patriotic town. I think we were second or third place behind Chicago Heights and Evanston. So this article came out. There's a few more things we can talk about in here, but I see there's an editorial written in the very center of the front page by a guy named Elmer Kelling. You know him?
Oh, yes.
Your brother, yeah. And then I also noticed that they gave credit to who put this newspaper together, and this was Elmer Kelling, Ray Piepenbrink, who's my dad, and Marilyn Kelling. You know who she is, right?
Oh, boy.
So you're in here a couple different times, and Phyllis's question before, what motivated you to start writing these letters? Was this newspaper published before or after you started writing letters, or about the same time?
Probably after.
Okay. Okay. Did any of your friends help you out with writing these letters?
No, just talked to all my classmates because they all had brothers and sisters and people that would be writing to their families. Yeah. These soldiers really appreciate that. That really was a morale builder for them to hear from the hometown. Yeah.
I'm just thinking, I was never in the military myself, but when mail call came along, I can just imagine how excited some of those guys were when they got a letter from a girl from home.
Right.
That had to be their highlight of their day. So anyhow, you were part of this newspaper, and we'll get this up on this, posted in this documentary so people can scrutinize it a little bit more. So that was good. Phyllis, what else you got for Marilyn?
Marilyn, I'd like to know some of the things that you said to them in your letters, and did you tell them about yourself and why you were writing them to them? And then in a few minutes, we'll go to any responses you get. But what did you say to them?
Well, mainly I, of course, introduced myself. And of course, these were all mostly older people. And they were probably closer to my brother's age or even older than him. So I say who I was and tell a little bit about myself, and then probably tell him or her, if I wrote a letter to a lady, but I didn't really to a lady, but I tell them about people that I had heard about, like Rodenberg. That was so sad, and the Weeks, Bob Weeks, how they were doing, whether we were hearing anything from them or about the other servicemen that I knew that they might be interested in where they were. Because, maybe they would be in Africa with them or in Italy, wherever they were, or the islands in the Pacific.
There must have been quite a huge network between all these soldiers and service people, because every once in a while you'd hear that so-and-so is at one camp and somebody from his hometown was at another camp, and they make arrangements to get together somewhere. And, it's always nice to see somebody from home.
Right.
And, I don't know how those guys could keep track of all that without a computer.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Like we do today.
Uh-huh.
Marilyn, did you have to pay the postage yourself, or did you use the V-mail?
Well, those V-mails, I don't know whether you paid for them later on when I wrote to missionaries in other countries, why they had the postage right on there. But see, really, it was only 3 cents for a letter. And because you were sent to an APO number, so it was either in New York probably or San Francisco, so you only paid postage for in the United States and not for a foreign country. So that wasn't expensive to write.
We're talking about V-mails here. I've got a sample V-mail here. Here's a larger form of the same thing. I don't know how big they were when they wrote on them.
Yeah. See, they were real big, but then they sent that in an airplane overseas, and then they they just sent the negative of the picture, and then they blew it. Well, you got just a real small thing of it, so it was pretty hard to read. There wasn't much room to write on one of those. So I usually, like when I write to my brother, I'd use the airmails paper that was real thin. And so I could write 2 or 3 pages. Oh, and then he had taught me how to typewrite before I had typing in high school. So, so I was really pretty good typewriter at that time too. And so I would, and if you typed on the email, there was more room to get more things on it too. That helped.
Here's an actual size email
Right.
that was received here. My dad wrote to his aunt, and that's this is that V-mail, so you can see how small they are. But as I understand it, somebody would write a letter wherever they were stationed, and they would send it to get censored first, because you couldn't let out, sensitive information. The government would censor it, and then they would take a photograph of the letter and put it on microfilm.
Right.
So they had the microfilm with hundreds and hundreds of small pictures, and then when they got back over here, they would print them out off of that microfilm. And this is almost a photo quality piece of paper right here that has the writing on there. So that's how they sent thousands and thousands of letters back and forth, easily, because they were so small and they had been put on the microfilm.
Right.
But your comment about using airmail with that real thin paper, I remember seeing those too. It's real onion skin paper, real thin stuff that
Right.
doesn't weigh anything. So.
No.
And did you, I want to talk a little bit about the letters that you received back from the veterans. How many letters did you receive back, or was it just a few from the veterans, as they were, they were in the military at that point and actively, and so they probably didn't have much of a chance to respond. But did you get a few back, or more than a few?
Yeah, I didn't get too many. So I could tell you about the one from Benny Musciarelli. He said, "I don't like to write letters."
Can you hold it up a little bit more? Yeah.
He said, "I don't like to write letters, so I'll just draw you a picture of Donald Duck." And he really wanted to be to keep drawing those for Disney, but he realized that he wouldn't really want to move to California, so he stayed in Chicago Heights and ended up living just a block away from me until he died. So, and see, his parents had a asparagus farm right across from the library. And so I would always walk over there and buy asparagus from his mom. And and then he worked for the Ford company until he died. So, and we were really good friends all our life. Then we met at the library because he liked to read books too. And so, yeah.
What was his first name?
Benny.
Benny Musciarelli.
Benny Musciarelli.
His picture is on that movie clip that I was telling you about.
Oh, good.
Yeah, my dad said, yeah, they owned an asparagus farm north of Crete, and he said he was a Babe Ruth type of a guy. He could hit a baseball a mile.
Oh,
so there was a nice. I mean, these are video pictures of these guys walking around. There was just no audio. You could see that they were talking, but you couldn't really read their lips. No, you could only read their lips. You wouldn't be able to hear anything. So he was in there. Just real quick, we've only looked at a sample or two of some of the letters you got, but I got to tell how this all came about. I don't know if you first remember meeting me. We had gone to a birthday celebration for Lillian Kelling.
Oh, I see.
Who was a cousin. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah,
we were sitting at a table. My wife Kathy and I were sitting at a table across from Millie Lucy Christopher, your next door neighbor across the street when you were girls. She was a little bit older than you because I know she was in my dad's class in school, and he was probably 6 or 7 years older than you. But anyhow, we're sitting there with Millie and her daughter Gail, and you came walking along, and oh, hi Millie, hi Marilyn, back and forth to each other, and got to talking, and then in the course of that conversation, you told me that, I've got this collection of letters that I got back from the servicemen during World War II that I wrote to these guys. And you had kept all those responses in a scrapbook or an album. And well, being historically interested, this is about 12 years ago, I'm going to guess. being historically interested in what's going on, I said, boy, I'd love to see that album of yours and look at those responses. And within 2 days, you had those albums over to me, and I kept them for about 4 months because it was such interesting reading. And at the time, I had asked you if it was okay to copy make copies of those pages, and you said okay. So I do have those pages all copied. Carol and Waylon Treebolt. I don't know if that rings a bell. That name.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I talked to them a lot, yeah.
Yeah. So they scanned in all those pictures of the pages. So that's how you and I first met, was at Lillian Kelling's birthday party.
Uh-huh.
And so after reading through that, you probably remember you came to Crete on Memorial Day one year, and we had you out in front of the review stand and recognized your efforts for writing all these letters, and thank you for doing that. So we had met then, and it was a nice tribute for you because of what you had done with writing these letters. So then we kind of lost contact with you. So the first time we met was just a coincidence, okay? After we kind of lost contact with each other, I'm talking to my friend down there in Broken Arrow. I don't know how we got on the subject, but my friend Paul Stisser says, "Oh, I know Marilyn. She lives here in Broken Arrow with us, and we go to church together." I said, "You're kidding." So by that coincidence, we got back together again, and that's why we're here today, because that gave us the opportunity to talk and share this more with the public here. Now, this is quite an interesting thing here. So, with the help of the library and Sarah here, we're going to have to maybe see about scanning some of these letter responses in so people can see more of them, because you've got a huge collection of them there. It's 200 and some letters, I think. Plus, like you said, you kept track of everybody that you wrote to with newspaper clippings and whatever if they got married or if they had kids or obituaries or whatever. You kept all that going. Now, you didn't stop this for World War II. You kept this on going all these years. And I believe you said you still write to some of these guys.
Oh, I don't know about writing to them, but yeah, probably most of them are dead now because I'm 94, so I have to start getting younger friends now.
Put her in reverse. Yeah, that would be good. So anyhow, that's how we're here today, is because these two coincidences that we met up with each other, and now we have this opportunity to share your story. This is fantastic. Phyllis, you got any more questions?
Yes. Are you aware of where your letters were going? I know you said there were addresses that were posted on the bowling alley wall, and you kept track of that too. Even though your letters went to the military in the US to be delivered wherever the soldiers were they mostly in Europe, or were they over in Asia too, or where were they, or Honolulu, or where were they stationed, many of them?
Mostly in Europe and then in the Pacific Islands. Yeah, Benny Musharelli said they were all just Japanese people there with him.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Well, they were all over the world, basically. Anywhere there was a U.S. service, there was somebody from Crete there, I think.
Yeah, we had map tacks that we put on the world map that we had in the bowling alley too, that would show they were all over the world. See, I had an uncle too that I had to write to. That was my grandma's, that we kept her. She had two sons that were just a little bit older than my brother. And the one was in Pearl Harbor on December 7th.
Wow.
When it happened. Yeah. So, and then he ended up in Guadalcanal after that. He was a Marine. He wasn't on one of the ships, but he was working on the land that day when it happened, and he had to get under his desk. He said at first they thought this was just maneuvers that they were practicing, but then they realized, no, this is war. And then my other uncle, he was a navigator, a celestial navigator. So he flew from the California area all the way across to Burma and the Far East there, over and over again. Yeah. So yeah, I had contact with people from all over the world.
You know, while we're talking about people that were in the service, if you see behind me, I've got one of these service flags here on the wall. That's a service flag. Everybody that had a son or daughter in the service would fly a service flag in their front window. And there were a couple of families in Crete that had 4 stars on those flags. I think the Allen family was one that had 4 boys in the service. And I believe Adams also had 4 boys in the service. Marvin Adams, he's the one that was involved with pulling President Bush out of his raft after his plane had been shot down. This is the first President Bush, George H.W. Bush. And so I think you knew of those guys and some of their stories too.
Right, and exactly that story. I have the book that was written about President Bush when that happened. And in there it mentions that the Allen boy was the best swimmer, so he was the one chosen to swim out to the raft and get him back to the submarine. And then when I told this story to my friend at my church here in Broken Arrow, her husband was interviewed for that same incident because he was on the airplane next to Bush and saw that they were shot down. So they circled the raft until they saw that the submarine picked them up. Can you imagine if I would run into somebody like that? She's also 94, so. But her,
Boy, what a couple of coincidences there too. Just to have two people that you know at the
Right.
same event, and one, getting somebody out of the ocean that has crash landed. That's amazing.
Were you, Marilyn, were you notified if a soldier was wounded or died, and maybe you wrote to a hospital area or for him, or can you tell us that?
no, I wasn't in contact with anybody like that. No, I would just find out from family members or articles in the paper.
I've got a list here of Crete guys that died during World War II.
Right,
You mentioned a couple names already, Robert Ron
right.
and Ken Weeks. Did you have any contact with any of those guys through the course of your letter writing? I'm going to read these names.
No, I don't really have, I read that article too, but you can read them if you want, yeah.
Yeah, let me read these names, because these names were on the plaque on the AMVET building. Kenneth Currier, William Lawrence Epley, John Fancher, Charles D. Ginn, Norman William Greasy, Raymond Emmett Hawes, Donald Meek, Francis Morris, Robert G. Ron, William C. Stenning, Robert H. Weeks, and Harold Withers.
Yeah, I knew of most of those, but I didn't really ever have written to them or anything, yeah.
Okay, that might have been earlier in the war, because I
Right,
think the newspaper article said that Robert Weeks had already been missing in action when the newspaper article came out, and that was in 1942, so that was pretty early in the war.
and then Rodenberg, my dad would always talk to his father too. And they were so, because he was in the Philippines and the Japanese had captured him there, but he finally was released.
Yeah, I didn't see his name on the list here of guys that had died in the service, so that was good for him.
Yeah, he survived.
Yeah.
Marilyn, when did you start doing the scrapbook? I mean, you're so organized. and you kept all these wonderful memories and letters and information. When did you start? As soon as you started writing, or a little bit later?
Oh, a bit later. Yeah. It would have been after we couldn't keep up with all the address changes. Yeah. And then we realized, well, we have to save all this information though. So that's when we started the scrapbook. And
Yeah, you had it right there at home, so you didn't have to run up to the bowling alley to put stuff up and everything. That probably helped you save a lot of legwork there.
yeah,
How far away did you live from the bowling alley? It was only a couple blocks, wasn't it?
couple blocks. Yep. Of course, I had to go to the post office every day because, we didn't get mail brought to the house that
Yeah.
time.
Right on the way. Yeah, you don't think about things that we take for granted today, so you had to do it on your own. And that wasn't where the post office is now. It's up on Main Street then, I suppose.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't far from when I was at school at Trinity. Then I could walk over there. And then, of course, then I'd go home and Mom would have me a list of groceries to go to the store then and buy. So,
It kept you busy.
oh, yeah.
Never a step wasted, right?
Right.
Do you have any other of your letters and pictures that you want to hold up in front of the screen there? We'll give people a little idea about some of.
Yeah, I did have the one from Gilbert Hinrichs. Yeah, he was in Africa, and see, my brother was in Africa too. So he had a really rough time. It was just so hard for him to get around because in the war, for a whole month, I guess he didn't change his socks or shoes or anything, and they were all wet. And so he was really hobbling around to get to do. He had to walk once, and it took him 8 days, I think, to make the trip. And then I think he ended up in the hospital after that. So yeah, it was really a really special one. And then, of course, Bob Ron always wrote me and wondered how things were going in high school. And so I'd tell him about that.
I often think back, it's etched in my mind forever. I was riding with my dad in Chicago Heights one day, and I was probably 12 or 13 years old. And we were going down, I believe, Chicago Road, and we were at a stoplight or something. And my dad says, "Take a look at that man over there." He was walking with a white cane. He had lost his vision.
Yeah, luckily we didn't have any men that really lost legs or anything that were really injured that badly. So we were thankful for that.
That particular man was the brother of our next door neighbor in Crete. I grew up in Crete too, and his last name was Martin. I don't remember his first name, but my dad says that man lost his vision.
How many, Marilyn, where or whatever other locations was your brother Elmer in during the war?
Well, Elmer, we were trying to figure out, why he was chosen to be in counterintelligence. And then when I think back, when he was in high school, my dad must have arranged for him to go to Camp Grant for about a week in the summer. And that was things about the military. And then another time he was elected to be going to Boys State in Springfield, Illinois. So whether the government, they keep track of all these things that we don't realize. And so they knew that he was somebody already really dedicated to his country. And so then we saw all these people going up and down our street and knocking at all of our neighbors' doors and saying, what are these? Myrtle Kelling and Marilyn Brower and, Marilyn Kelling at that time. And, are these good people, or should we have him in the service. So he ended up getting trained and he went into North Africa then before the military went in, and he lived in Casablanca. He lived in a home, ate their meals, and he said, yeah, the thing was, you know, when you got done with the meal, if you liked it, you'd kind of belch, and then you'd say, Alhamdulillah, and that was like, that's really a good meal. So, yeah, then after that got settled, he was there even before Roosevelt and Churchill was down in Africa. So anyway, then he was sent in early to Italy for the other troops, and he was in Naples. And of course, see, this old time, you couldn't write to him Sergeant. He was Mr. Elmer Kelling. And he keeps saying, my teacher at school, he keeps writing me saying, Sergeant Elmer Kelling, and you're supposed to say Elmer Kelling, you know, not, I'm a plain clothes man. So we have all kinds of pictures of him in his office and working with all these other men and more just plain clothes like we do every day, and no service clothes. So yeah, and then I should probably explain a little bit about his health. When he was in high school, the freshman year of high school, he fell tumbling and broke his collarbone. Well, it would not heal. So they finally had to wire it together. And then later on, when he was in Italy, they removed his spleen. Then when he got home, we were at the Memorial Day parade in September at Crete, and he looked kind of pale, and he had spots on his legs where the blood was bursting underneath the skin. So he had round red marks, and he thought, well, that's just from playing with my kids, because he had 3 children. And so the next day he had to go to the hospital in Harvey, because he was living in Harvey at the time. And he was there a week, and they decided it must be leukemia. It's the bad kind, and we can't do anything for him. So they sent him to Heinz Hospital then, where for the veterans, and he was there a week and died. So they told us that it was just a rare blood disease. And then too, you know, we like to look up his records in the service in Italy and Africa, and then they keep saying, no, all of his records were destroyed in a fire in Missouri. And well, we don't know whether they just don't want us to know what he all did, but it's just kind of hard for the children, you know, now. And then, you know, my sister-in-law is still alive she'll be 100 in a month. She's been a widow all these years, raising those 3 children. And her oldest daughter, my brother's oldest daughter, was a nurse and married a doctor from Bogota, South America. And they were married only 7 years. And he died. And she had the 3 children. So it happened again in our family the second time, not just the one time, but the second time. She did remarry a doctor, an eye doctor, and helped raise his daughter, because his wife had died of cancer. So I'm so thankful that I have children from my brother. it's kind of hard to be an only child, because he died at 28. So that's why then I had to take care of my mom when she died, because and then I had to take care of my husband when he got dementia. So it just, God prepares us for everything in our life, what we can help with. So, and like I said, I'm still writing letters, and I just I'm so happy that I can be able to still do these things by myself. And I really, oh, and then I should mention too, the Crete Library, it's built on my Uncle Otto's farm. And so my cousin, Ruby, and her husband are both, well, her husband was 100 in March, she'll be 100 in July. And they've both been married, all those many, many years, and they're still alive in Ashland, Kentucky. So what a small world. But here now I'm talking to Crete, Illinois, and where I grew up. I'm really blessed to have been a member of the Crete Society, and it was wonderful being in Crete. I really miss them.
Well, we're so fortunate to be with you today. We are just so fortunate. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's always good to see you, Marilyn. Maybe I'll get down there to Broken Arrow one of these days and say hi to you.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah. Yes. Isn't it a small world how we keep meeting all our friends and people? Yeah.
It really is. Well, I guess maybe we can, end our discussion here today. I've got a couple of things to say here as we wind this down here. I'll hold these up and read it. It will get posted as an image anyhow, but our final remarks. Many terrible events pulled the United States into World War II in the early 40s. There are so many people to thank, mainly the military, but also those on the home front who fed, clothed, and equipped our troops. Every person was involved. Marilyn Kelling-Brower certainly did her part in about the only way she could. We salute you, Marilyn, and words are hardly enough to express our thanks. Phyllis?
Yes, and because of your service to our veterans, and we as a Crete Area Historical Society are making you an honorary member of the Crete Historical Society, and we're sending you a special copy of this too.
Wonderful.
Yes, so we're so thankful for you and all that you did for our veterans and their families.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, the Crete mayor and all those people, they had sent me a letter too, thanking me for keeping the list, because then they were going to honor all the soldiers, and they wanted to check my number and a list of who I had on mine that were from the Crete area. So yeah, I'll add that to my book. My scrap.
There you go. You got a special page for it there.
Right.
Marilyn, you've shared your story with us. The cards and letters that you've saved and protected are here for future generations to see in this documentary that we're doing today. Just a few things here. The Crete Area Historical Society will place these documents on a website soon for researchers if they want to look into that with your permission. For questions, we'll have our email address if people want to ask us questions about the documentary here. Other research can be done through the Crete Public Library's website. That's www.cretelibrary.org. Under the About tab, where you can go to the Capturing Crete section. That's where the library has helped the Historical Society back quite a number of years ago, recording and documenting a lot of our things and pictures that we want to preserve. So that's a nice reference point there. Another interesting site for research on Crete history is a YouTube channel called Crete Township Pictures, Illinois, by Ryan Martin of the Crete Area Historical Society. And as I mentioned earlier today, there is you can watch a World War color movie clip of Crete troops at home on leave. If you go to YouTube, it's WW2 Crete, Illinois, soldiers on leave. So as soon as you see this, you'll be able to go and look at that. Again, it's narrated by my dad at the AMVET building in the early 80s. But again, Ryan Martin took the audio and overlaid it on the movie. So that's an interesting thing to look at too for people that are interested in seeing some of these guys in color, no less, in 1941 or whatever year it was. It's pretty early. So I think that's all we've got here today. I see
I
Bruce
did write
there.
your dad. I did write your dad too.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I have all his letters, but he was really in the occupation of Germany after the World War was over that time. So,
Yeah. He was in the 12th Armored Division,
and
and
then
he was in the 12th Armored Division that he got into Europe in about 1944, and they had to march their way into Germany. They, at one point, the 12th Armored Division was the leading point of the spear going into Germany. So I got some interesting pictures and a few things of his, like his helmet.
oh yeah,
This old bucket here is pretty heavy. Going to walk around all day with that thing on would be difficult. So
right.
our service people surely did not have a vacation that they were on. That's for
No,
sure.
it was a hard thing.
Yeah.
And then he
Okay, well,
even took our wedding picture when we got married.
great. Well, my dad was an amateur photographer, took a lot of wedding pictures, a lot of other pictures around. He was instrumental in getting the Crete history going. I think I told Bruce the other day when we were talking that a guy named Mr. Dasher gave my dad a whole stack of glass plate negatives. He had taken pictures of Crete around the turn of the century. And since my dad was interested in history and photography, he gave those to my dad, and the library scanned those in, the Crete library, and that helped the Crete Historical Society get back on track. We had kind of had a hiatus there for a while. So Phyllis is quite involved with that. She knew my dad pretty well, spent a lot of time with him. So Phyllis, you got any comments on that?
Well, I was so lucky to spend a lot of time with him. He taught me everything about Crete history because I didn't grow up here, and his basement was just full of Crete history. And I know it's now with you, thank goodness, Tim, but your dad was just a wonderful, wonderful guy, caring about Crete and wanting to keep history alive for other people like me.
We've got some great historians in Crete, and we're building on that. So we've got a good historical society going. So this is probably a feather in our cap here doing this documentary. I have to tell you, this is fantastic.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. I've enjoyed this very much.
I have too. Yes, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
If you come visit her, she's got a house full of history.
I can't imagine that.
Yes,
This is Beth here, right?
yes, I'm Beth. I'm
Yes.
the daughter.
Okay, and I saw Bruce on the other side a minute ago.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us and helping out with this project here. This is a real milestone for anybody that has any people that run across such an unusual and interesting topic. I'd encourage any historical society to latch onto it and run with it, because it's going to get lost if we don't preserve it. So this is fantastic. Thank you very much, Marilyn.
And thank you, Sarah Wegley, too,
Yes.
of the library, for helping us do this, make this available to us. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Marilyn, it's an honor to meet you and to hear your story. I'm so glad that technology allows us to cross the miles this way and preserve history for the future. Thank you so very much.
Thank you again. Yes.
Okay, with that, I guess we'll sign off then. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.